Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm going to discuss about the biotic and abiotic factors. Uh, we have already discussed about the biotic factors in a previous class, and then we have also seen how the energy flows in an ecosystem, and we also know the different different procedures that energy is being transferred from one trophic level to another trophic level. So today's we are going to look at once more the slides, the ecosystem components. The ecosystem consists of biotic and an abiotic factors. In the abiotic factors, we will be discussing about the rain, light, wind, temperatures as critical factors, and erratic factors related to the soils. In the soil, we'll be looking at the soil pH, soil minerals, and topographics. So, uh, in a way, in the biotic components, in the last class, we have already discussed about the producer, consumers, and decomposer. In the consumers, we have also seen the primary, secondary, and tertiary and quaternary consumers. So, the biotic component has been already covered while discussing about the energy. So in the abiotic part, so today we are going to look at how the abiotic factors plays important role in running the ecosystem. Right. So we will go for the next slides. In the next slides, we are going to look at that what are the abiotic factors. Abiotic factors is a non-living components, and they are the limiting factors, and also this is since it's a limiting factors because each contributes greatly in the growth of living organisms. Limiting factors are like too much of particular substance and too less of particular factors. Too less and too much is always a problem to the growing living organisms within an ecosystem. Uh, we also know that any conditions like temperature, light, soil, water, predations, including the predations, disease, pollution, parasites, competitions, or any other resources are necessary for the survival of living organisms. And when one becomes too much and one becomes too less, leads to some kind of the problems. So that problem is called limiting factors. When there is a too high temperature or too low temperature, when it is too extremely hot, it leads to a desert. When too much of cold, then it leads to the tropical, polar, you know very cold conditions, which is not feasible, which is not conducive to the animals living in an ecosystem. Let's look at the critical factors, how they affects. The critical factors which I am talking about are the abiotic factors that governs the ecosystems. The When we talk about critical system, we always look at the optimum uh, tolerable or the optimum limit where we will see that particular species can survive. So that is a critical factor. Critical factors or the critical environmental factors are those which will affect the organism living within an ecosystem in a given time. So living things are seen more tolerable when it has got an optimum. So we are also looking at now to the tolerant limit of any organisms. If the living organisms gets an opportunity with an optimum range, we are going to see the largest number of animals that can grow. But if tolerance is tolerance zone is very low, or the low tolerance limit or high tolerance limit, there is no animal can survive in this zone. And in this zone, low tolerance limit and high tolerance limit, no species. Whereas a zone of physiological stressfully few animal can adjust at these regions. So either of these curve, the some of the animals can tolerate to some extent, and here in this range the animals are found quite low. However, at optimum range, we are going to see maximum animals can grow. This is what happens within the ecosystem. Not that every animal survives within an ecosystem, even though they get sufficient nutrition and other factors. Let's look at now the limits of range, like physical barrier. Oceans, mountains, icebergs are the physical barrier for some of the animals. Climatic conditions at altitudes, foods, water, competitors are also another factor for the animals living within an ecosystem, animals or the plants. This is what is being shown on the map, is that if you look at the line that divides the earth is equator, and the nearby equator you are going to see there is some colors, whereas on the polar regions you are going to see the blank. These polar regions indicates there is different biomes that can exist on these regions, whereas on the ecosystem there is no biomes or lack of ecosystems. Critical environmental factors, like when you discuss about the altitudes, we always consider about the availability of the oxygens and the temperatures and also the food. So higher the altitudes and lower the altitude, just imagine the number of animals that live in the lower altitudes and higher altitudes. So this all depends on the tolerance of the animals living within an ecosystem. Therefore, sometimes the environment itself is an indicators of animal that can live. Natural selections. Natural selections occurs within the ecosystem. Member of the populations can survive if they are well fit to be lived within that particular ecosystem. So their pre-genetic diversity determines, because the actual population should have a wide range of genes, and they also should have selective uh, resources, very limited resources, and uh, there must be a lot of competitions within the population. So such things leads to a natural selection. Natural selection is a selection where we see there's a competition within the same species. Speciations is a process where new species being origin or new species being formed. And now if you look at here, there is a geographical isolation where the animals is being uh, kept in a longer distance due to the geographical isolations, and longer period of geographical isolation leads to formation of new species. And similarly, the when the populations are separated from their main genetic pools, then again it also forms a very new species. Here, when there is a big gene pool, if a group of animals moves away from the big gene pool and continue to lead their life, then this group of animals would going to become divergent and convergent evolutions. Evolution is very important for the animals living within an ecosystem. If all the animals try to converge and try to become similar, then there will be a lot of stress amongst the populations. So they try to be different and try to follow different lines of growth. So they try to be unrelated in their habitat and habit so that they can coexist within the same ecosystem. So look alike, act alike, or which is usually means a physical basis. So it's not if look alike and act alike, this is leads to a lot of competitions and such kind of things is called convergent, whereas divergent is following a different directions and each species lives in different habitats, it's different foods. Now, looking at the competitions, we will see that there is a divergent and convergent. Divergent, you are going to look at the divergent, we are going to look at there is a two different species without any overlapped foods or any activities that happens that is being shared between the two population. Here you are going to see when there is a two populations are sharing certain resources as a food, then we are going to see certain group of populations are not so popular as other groups. Now, law of competitive exclusions. No species in a same species can compete for same resources. That is there. No, every species have their own food, own likings, own habitats, own living space. No, and that leads to less competitions. If in case happen to be same living in a same habitat and then same compete for the same foods, and that leads to diversion. I mean, like there's a competitions, and finally one of the species migrates. And this is called food partitioning, where you are seeing that each animal has their own shares of eating foods. There is a few areas where they compete each other, however they have their own. So there, which means this animal has a more opportunity to get survive within the ecosystem. Coming to predations. Sorry, I would like to continue with coming to the predations. Predations, very well known predations is feeding upon another living organisms. Not it kills the prey in doing so. So, for example, mosquito feeds on the human being, however, it doesn't kill. Similarly, the most prey successfully act on to the slowest and the most unfit organisms within the population. So it means weaker one, the one that cannot compete with others has an opportunity to die here. So predations happens to only to those weakest, slowest, and unfit populations. So these kind of an action leads to reduction in the population. Reduction is overpopulation growth, stimulate natural selections. So co-evolutions and the disease. If a disease kills too quickly, it spreads. It can't spread. Today we have COVID-19, which is spreading worldwide, because these diseases do not kill the patient instantly. It takes 14 days to show its symptom. Otherwise, until then, it remains asymptomatic. Therefore, disease can be, uh, if the disease can moderate or well host becomes more resistance, or disease can lethal but messy, or disease can be little very slow acting. These is the one which makes more messy, and here this such kind of killing slowly, slow killing leads to the co-evolution formation of new line of species. Okay, then now keystone species are those group of species which has got a maximum impact on the ecosystem, larger impact and larger influence of its influence on an ecosystem. Such species are called keystone species. Large predators, critical food organisms, or many species are intricately interconnected so that it is difficult to tell which is essential component, because many a times there will be a lot of competitions. However, we are going to see that if the larger predators has got a bigger impact on this particular ecosystem, because it can very well can dominate that ecosystem. Therefore, such species are called keystone species. Thank you. I end here with the first